All right, everybody, welcome to the show. For those that haven't been on the show before, you'll see a Q&A button there at the bottom. So William is our guest today. He's our presenter, and he's going to be doing his presentation. Throughout his presentation, if you have any questions that come up, please click that Q&A button, ask your question, and then after his presentation, we will go through all of your questions. There is a raise your hand button as well. You can click that if Matt says, or William says, can I get a show of people from the United States? You can click that raise your hand button, and that'll let us know that you've answered I am or whatever. That's really all there is to it. There's a chat feature where you guys can chat with each other while throughout the presentation. Just chime in on anything you want to make a comment on. I see Curtis Brown has posted one. Seems as though I came to the right place. So maybe Curtis is into Bitcoins.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So that's pretty much it, guys. We'll just go ahead and start the show now. Welcome to PermaEthos TV presentations. This is season 2, episode 1, the season premiere. And I'm very excited to have our guest today. Our guest is William Horvath. William is the mind behind Permaculture Apprentice, which is a blog that deals with the practicalities of making a transition. Good to have William with us today. He wrote a awesome article that I was hyping up there for a while, and he promised he'd talk a little bit about it today, so I'm really excited about that. Welcome to the show, William.
Nice to be here.
All right, you can take it from here, man. You can start your presentation or talk about whatever you want.
Okay, I'll start my presentation, then I'll just go through. As I go through, I'll be sharing some stories.
All right.
All right. So can you just tell me if you can see?
Yep, I see it. Everything looks good.
All right. Okay. So welcome everybody. As Josiah said, I'm the mind behind Permaculture Apprentice. That's my website that I started, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And in this presentation, I'll explain everything. I'll explain my story and how I got here. But today in my presentation, I'll be talking about, how to set up a resilient permaculture farm. And with that, I'll be going through all the components of resilient permaculture farm, and I'll be actually in the beginning, I'll be establishing some context. So when I say resilient, or the question is resilient to what? So just a disclaimer, everything that I'll be talking tonight that can be expanded in much more detail. Actually, I have presentations, almost each slide that I'll be talking can be a presentation in itself. So I'll just giving you a framework tonight, about how to think when you are setting up your farm and how to make it resilient. And first, a little bit background. So I grew up on a farm, and that farm is in Croatia, where I'm right now. So the images that you're seeing, that's from my grandparents' farm. And as a kid, I was spending a lot of time there, doing gardening and all the chores of farming. And that was a big part of my childhood, actually, being close to nature, connect to nature, and having my hands in dirt. And today I'm back on my grandparents' farm. I'll get to that, I'll get to that, how I got here. But this was my childhood, but it was actually interrupted by the Croatian war, by the war that we had in Yugoslavia at the time. That was when I was a kid, maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years or so. And I clearly remember, I wasn't actually on the front lines experiencing the war, but I was mostly on the fringes. But still, I experienced even the military jets flying above me and dropping not bombs, but they were actually shooting at some buildings that were around maybe 1 or 2 kilometers. And even today I can remember running into the shelter and ground missiles dropping maybe also a few kilometers away, and experiencing that lightning and the air pressure from the ground missile. And that was also a big part of my childhood, and a big part of why I am here where I am. That all kind of shaped me in a way, and made me the person that I am today. And as I grew up, I tried to find something that's connected to nature, that I could do and be outside, enjoy the outdoors. And I found myself, being a geologist and working in Australia for a while, because Australia is very rich in minerals. And that was a really great experience. But actually, I was really disappointed by what happened while I was working, because I was actually a part of a machinery that was actually destroying the environment rather than destroying the environment and trying to deceive the local people with what we were doing. So I felt that that's not in line with my values, and I wanted a way out. Okay, so the job was good, but the career was good. I had I have a good wage and living in the suburbs of Melbourne. But I knew that something, I knew that I didn't want to be there. So what I've done is, I strategically planned my way out. I did quit my job. I saved a lot of money. My wife and we saved a lot of money. We lived in the share accommodation, and saved almost 60-70% of our wage. We done a few good investments, and with that also saved some money. But I knew that I want to quit my job and come back to take over my grandfather's farm, because that was the land that was available to me. So once I done that, I volunteer on many farms. If you're in Australia and you have that opportunity, you can meet all these great people. So I met David Holmgren, I met Darren Doherty, and I, in my search for knowledge, I met a lot of people who were my mentors. And in doing so, I also started my website to actually help myself, primarily by doing the research, and also it gave me leverage to talk with all those people, to interview them and talk with them. And once I come back, I started my farm, and that's what I'm doing today. I'm having kind of an online and offline business, with my online business being my website, and offline business being my farm, where I'm developing skills, and I'm learning plant propagation, and I'm planting trees and establishing the perennial systems on my farm. Also, recently we had Mark Shepard here, so he was also kind of my mentor, in the sense that he gave me a few pointers in which direction I should take my life, not my life basically, but my farm. And I must say that as I'm doing all of this, I'm meeting a lot of resistance from people because of my choices in life and my decision to pursue this kind of lifestyle. Because according to normal people, I should have a 9-to-5 job and a secure salary and be a slave to a corrupt system. But I don't know, but I just have problems with accepting that status quo. And I get criticized by people from time to time, whether that's my old friends, or even my parents. They all have something to say, and most of that they think that I'm crazy for pursuing this lifestyle. you see, my farm is in the middle of nowhere, and that people say that that's a childhood dream, what I want to achieve. Even with my website, people are, I have a lot of people on my email list, some 15,000 now, and I'm developing all these strategies and means to ways to help people, but people say it will never work. And I would say that, of course, it's hard to go against the grain all the time, but I get reminded about my choices from time to time. So there was a few months ago, my wife was in the hospital, and it was nothing serious, but we went to the ER, and as I was sitting and thinking about everything, I was wondering about my choices and what those people are saying, but then I just started to walk and think about all this as I was waiting, being anxious to see what was happening, and then I actually saw an old man. He was breathing deeply, and he was actually looking like he's going, he's gone in minutes, hours or so. So I thought to myself, is what would be important to me if I was that old man reflecting on my life. And I knew, in those situations, you actually knew you knew the answer. I knew the answer because my heart was telling me that I want to live the life that is true to myself, not the life that others are expecting of me to live. And that, these kinds of things always put things into perspective. And today I must say that I'm happy with all my choices that I made in life. They're not easy, but they were true to what I feel is the right path for me and my family to take. And that's what I want to say, that the lesson is, no matter what goal you choose, if you're choosing goal of having more freedom, starting your farm, there will always a lot of people telling you that you're wrong, and so you're better off doing what you feel that is right for you. So you can say that you tried and you have no regrets because at least you tried something. So it's important for people to know what they want, and no matter what you choose, you're always going to be wrong according to others. So it really doesn't matter if you have their support or not. But most likely, you'll have support from your family and even from your parents, because they, everybody wants the best for you. And others who are maybe jealous, they're probably jealous because you're living the life they would like to live. So that's just a short story that I wanted to share as I'm, going through this transition as myself. That's also the social part of the transition is also important. So don't get discouraged about people not supporting you in your decision. And I must say that, in my life and in my transition, in my motivation for this transition, I'm primarily motivated by, the lifestyle, the quality of lifestyle that I'm trying to achieve. But my secondary motivation would be, the big changes and challenges that are coming. And I look those challenges through the lens of energy, environment, economy, and technology. And this is actually when I say resilient permaculture farm, I think about resilient to these kind of challenges. And I'll just go quickly through all of them. As I said, each of the categories that I'll be explaining, all these challenges, they can be expanded in the whole presentation. So the first is energy. So first I look at the energy. So energy is, for now, energy is not a pressing concern. Although the reality is that the vast bulk of the world's oil production have peaked and it's actually going into decline. But we have modestly increasing energy supply because of the extraction of unconventional fossil fuels and that's fracking at tar sands. If if you know, and you've probably seen, as you can see from the images, but they are actually not an answer to peak oil. They're able to sustain the supply for the time being, but at a huge environmental cost. And in addition, they have a terribly low energy profit ratio. That means how much energy you have to put in to get that energy back. And these highly complex operations, they require a financial system that is actually capable of providing huge amounts of affordable capital. And we're going to talk about that later, but this availability of this cheap money or lack of it that drives exploration and energy return on energy invested, the reality that has a huge potential to cause shocks in energy price and supply, make it less affordable in the short term. Energy demand is increasing by the day, and we can see that from what's happening, because we wouldn't be exploring and using we wouldn't be extracting using these methods if there was enough oil in the oil fields. So what I'm assuming that's going to happen is that energy demand will be increasing, keep on increasing, and that's just a fact. And there will be probably a gap between the total amount of energy that fossil fuels can give us and how much we will need. And I would say in the short term, the alternative energy sources, like wind and solar, they will be able to provide the substitute. But there will be probably a huge gap, in probably maybe next, I would say, 30, 40 years, where we'll need something else. And actually, David Holmgren, the co-region of Permaculture, actually says that we already entered into energy descent, where we probably long-term won't have enough energy because we didn't find a way to substitute the fossil fuels. But if we are focusing on short-term, I would say that the complexity of operations that we have and the affordable, maybe the lack of affordable capital can cause shocks in energy price and supply. So this is kind of the first, energy is always a pressing concern on your farm and in your life. So, we need to think about that. The second one is is technology, because as technology is accelerating exponentially, what's going to happen is that there will be huge loss of jobs due to automatization and other disruptive technologies. And I found one report that says that in China, 77% jobs are at risk from automatization. In US, that's 47. So let's say on average, 50% of all jobs that are existing today are at risk. And this massive loss of jobs will be precipitated by a second wave of automatization. And this time, that's one that is centered on artificial cognition, cheap sensors, machine learning, and distributed smart networks. The first wave of automatization in the mid-20th century, as you remember, that one decimated working class jobs in traditional manufacturing. This time, the jobs that are going to be at risk are the middle class jobs. So currently, most at risk are low skill jobs, manufacturing industry and so, but increasingly skilled jobs are at risk of being replaced. And so the fear is that while artificial intelligence will bring radical increases in efficiency in the industry, for ordinary people, this will translate into unemployment and uncertainty, as human jobs are slowly but surely automated. And probably, many workers will have to retrain, perhaps repeatedly in their lifetime, as jobs are replaced by machines. Okay, so the next is environment. So our environment is, changing, and everybody can see that, and because of environmental destruction, and it's evident that climate is changing in a way. Now there are many uncertainties. I would say that there are many uncertainties when it comes to predicting how climate change, will pan out. And, maybe our climate is due to solar minimum that we're in, or maybe it's because of what humans are doing. But I would say that's not as important, because it's evident that the climate is changing in a way. Maybe, if we go into global cooling or global warming, we all need to prepare for the new weather patterns that are going to emerge. But that's why I say it's hard to predict what the climate effects will be. Climate science is a complex beast, and additionally, we actually don't know how our governments are going to respond to these challenges. And maybe it's going to be a global carbon tax, maybe it's going to be a massive infrastructure investment in adaptation, or perhaps a widespread geoengineering project. But what is actually certain is that in short term, we see that there is increase on frequency of extreme weather events, floods and droughts and tornadoes, heat waves. And so it all depends on where you're living. Each place is experiencing differently. But for example, in certain areas you have floods that are supposed to come once in 100 years, coming 2 years in a row. So that's what I'm actually talking about. We don't even have to, talk about the rising 2 degrees or 3 degrees in global temperature. What's important that the weather patterns we need to be adapting to weather patterns that are happening now. And if we get into a situation where the temperatures are rising, that means that warmer air will hold more moisture. So that means more storms, more Hurricane Katrina types of events, rainfall that is coming increasingly in the form of intense storms, and then causing flash floods and poor infiltration. So I would say that the threat here is that due to this erratic intense weather, we can expect that year-to-year yields are going to cause food shortages and food price spikes. That's already, for example, in Croatia we had a really tough winter with a really really cold days, and now the prices of of food in supermarkets are just crazy. And that's just one winter. So if you imagine, if we say we have few winters that are like this, then the food price is going only up. So that's what I'm saying when it comes to threat from climate change and weather extremes. And finally, is its economy. So basically, among everything that I touched, earlier, I see the finance. The finance is actually concerning me the most. A lot of people are not even aware that from the beginning of 2008, we've been running the greatest experiment with money ever, one that is completely unprecedented in the history of money. We have 22 central banks simultaneously taking interest rates to zero and pumping the largest amount of money ever created in the economy, trying to stop it from collapsing. So, we are in the uncharted territory, and unfortunately, the supposed recovery is very sluggish, but that cheap money has pushed everything so artificially high once again, so that the bubbles have re-emerged, in the stock, bond, and real estate markets. And I would say more worryingly, all these smaller bubbles are just part of the largest bubble in the history that we are currently in, as you can see from the image on the upper right. There is just unsustainable amounts of debt compared to how much is GDP in US, for example. And I would say that what's happening in the economy is very predictable, because borrowing credit actually sets in motion mechanical, predictable, and unavoidable events. Because there is a time in the future where you'll need to spend less than you make in order to pay it back. So this all creates a predictable debt cycles, one that takes 5 to 8 years, and another one, the big one, that takes 75 to 100 years. So the short-term debt cycles are well known. That's like 2008 crisis. But the long-term debt cycle, the one that's beyond our living memory, are the ones that are actually dangerous and that have potential to reverse itself in the deleveraging. So I wouldn't say that the leveraging is even questionable, because the leveraging happens. They're just a natural force of the monetary system. But the main question is when it's going to happen and how it's going to play out over the coming years. So, and when it happens, the period, might look like and feel similar to the last financial crisis, but it could be much bigger. And, if you just want to see how the economic collapse looks like, we don't have to look anymore further than Greece. What's happening in Greece? People in Greece are already experiencing economic collapse and collapse rate and everything. So it all depends where you are located in the world. That's how you're going to experience all these events. All these events are actually happening in certain parts of the world. And I would say that today's systems that's in place is showing signs of stress. Again, this of course depends on where you live, but I would say that the trends are almost everywhere the same, and that's more central control. The governments are increasingly going into protectionism mode. Maybe that's in preparation for the events. Maybe they just know that social inequality leads to social unrest. But I would say that governments are increasingly focusing its resources on maintaining the nation state. And usually this is more evident, this is the most evident through the militarization of police, all at the cost of neglecting, certain government services and infrastructure. So you can see, US is always a good example for me, because we see that the US, I don't know in how many years, but it's evolved into a country in which you have militarized police with, body armor, automatic weapons, armored vehicles, and other military, equipment, already policing the citizens. And, to protect itself, governments also employ real methods where they increasingly monitor and track citizen behaviors. And, again, in US, this is done by NSA program and high-tech surveillance technologies, Facebook, Google, smartphone apps. This is kind of the future that we are going in. It's increasingly dystopian. It can be, the future can be also very positive with the technology that are coming, but it all depends on our governments. So I would say that what we are seeing is that political system is inevitably becoming more fascist, as corporate and state powers merge. So I wouldn't say that fascism is in our future. Basically, it's here now. It all depends, if you're aware of the things that are happening. So, and all these changes and frustration with politics and politicians actually provide a fertile ground for the rise of political extremists. And we are seeing that the people who are actually unsatisfied with the current establishment are more and more searching for people who are going to give them solutions. And this is the danger, because then those people who are actually coming, they sell simplistic populist ideas that actually sound good, but there are false illusions of solutions. And people want to hear that. And that's why we get a rise of the political extremists in the US, in the European Union. We are in European Union, we're also seeing the rise of the extreme right-wing, politicians that are actually building walls, building barbed wire fences, and attacking immigrants as they are guilty for everything. And all of this sounds, pretty, eerie similar to what was happening before World War II. So I would say that these are just the signs that system is broken and under pressure is changing. But when it comes to all of us, I would say that there are many challenges ahead, in energy technology, environmental challenges in both short-term and long-term. But I would say that through the economy is that the repercussions of these future shocks will be most evident. Whether that means that you get unemployed because the economy is in recession, you lose your off-farm jobs, job that keeps your farm afloat, or your credit gets frozen and you can't leverage yourself, or the services that government were providing are not there anymore, and infrastructure is not maintained, or the government imposes austerity measures like here in Europe, I don't have to go, far to see that all these changes that I was just talking in economy are already happening here. So I'm already forced to be adapting rather than I don't have any opportunity to leverage myself with the credit. I'm currently sort of unemployed, according to the bank. So people in those kind of situations are forced to move to another state or another country because of this economic contraction. And all these things, are making my life harder, and are making a lot of other people's life harder. And that's what I want to say today, is that that the current system is weak. It's showing signs of decline, and we actually can't do much about it. We can't do anything to change what's happening on a global or national level or even regional. All of this is in our circle of concern, but what we can do instead is to focus on our circle of influence and be proactive at our household and local community level. So how vulnerable you are to any of outlined possible future crises depends on how dependent you are to the current system. The greater the dependence, the greater the consequences. So that's why we need to build our own parallel system. System that is actually parallel to the central system, so we can weather the decline. We improve our self-reliance and our resilience, and but by doing so, we are actually resilient to all these kind of events, because I don't believe the central system will ever fail. Even I was talking with Josiah about Venezuela. Venezuela is basically in economic collapse, but the government is still there. The government just expanded its central power. It just went into protectionism mode. It will never fail totally, and most certainly it won't do it overnight. It's going to be gradual decline. So the government services actually become less effective in delivering goods and services that we all rely on, basically making our life harder. But that's why this is what we actually need to be prepared for. I don't believe in a end of the world scenario where you get I don't know, total chaos and Mad Max scenario. I believe the collapse looks like just like it looks like in Croatia. The life gets harder. You lose your jobs. You don't have any more credit. Government increased taxes and fees. People start to think much more short term. Gray economy increases, and you are basically on your own. There is no welfare system. You're on your own. And people who are actually having a farm that is able to provide for their basic needs and even produce surplus to sell and barter, those people actually don't depend on government. And I would say that today we even have more opportunities to create even better lives, because we have all these great tools and technologies that are on our disposal. Internet and everything that's happening with the crowdfunding and alternative currencies, and open source technology, 3D printers, these all things, and even what Elon Musk is doing with better batteries and solar roofs. These are all important trends that are going into our favor. Those are the trends of decentralization. From one side, government wants more central control. From other side, we have all these technologies that are giving us more power and creating more decentralized system. And I believe that we can all use them for our benefit. So that's why I say that the future actually looks bright, despite everything that is happening. But to ensure to be ahead of the game, we need to build a resilient permaculture fund that will be able to absorb the coming shocks and even benefit from them. In this regard, I see the permaculture. I see permaculture, resilient permaculture fund consisting of 5 essential components, and that's location and community. Where you locate yourself and what kind of community you have around yourself. Water, infrastructure, living system, and farm economy. And so this is the crux of my presentation. I'll be going through all of these explaining how to you set them up. All of this can be made into a presentation itself. I'm just giving you a framework, what you can, how to think about this. Okay, so the first one is location and community. So, we need each other to go through whatever is about to happen. So humans are social creatures. We need community interaction. We also have all different kind of strengths and areas of expertise, and we all benefit from sharing that. And more to the point, local communities can provide different ways of well-being, and by doing so, they can compensate for whatever decline of the central system, we might experience. And I would say the first is location, but location of the land and its relationship to both town services and the community affects its potential as much as natural characteristics of the land. And this simply means that you might have a perfect piece of property with a huge natural resources, but without a community and far away from the services that a local town can offer, you're disadvantaging yourself big time. I would say even in a failing economy like Croatia, you have small pockets or small towns that are actually going better than the main capital, and this is because they have they have local structures, they have different culture of different feel to it, they operate differently, with neglecting the central government, and they can provide even if on a federal level, on the national level, the government is failing, the different localities are able to provide different better services than you could find in some totally different place. So in positioning yourself, I would say that if you go somewhere out there in a rural area, you are far more likely to be on your own, and you need to be as self-sufficient as you can. And there are a few services and opportunities, but you don't want to be in the middle of the town. So I would say that the best compromise is somewhere on the edge, and that is the permaculture principle, that the edge. So being with others and having some kind of services and having some self-sufficiency potential as well. And community. A community is going to be one of the most important elements of your resilience. Whatever the future holds, it's better to face it surrounded by the people you respect, admire, and love. People who you can trust and you can count on. Even in the worst case scenario, if you have what they say, golden horde coming from the cities, to the less populated areas, if you have a strong community, in that extreme case, you'll be able to weather the decline. Even in Croatia, when we had war, people were forming local communities, okay, and they were doing local policing, and they were protecting their villages and their towns. You can't do that if you're on your own somewhere in a rural area. You'll be first that people will come. So we need community, and the closer you live to your community, the better. So I would say that and you need to rethink your approach as being a lone ranger somewhere out there. If you're alone in the woods with no community to speak of, you'll be missing on so many benefits that community can offer. In community you can pool all your resources, time, skills, enthusiasm, money, and do stuff. You can create local currencies and barter for what you don't have, and working together and building social capital. That is, that's why I put the community almost on top. But the community is dependent on the location where you are, and where you're going to position yourself depends on your unique context and what opportunities you have. Some are able to relocate to other countries, some within the country, some maybe locally, and some not at all. So if you're serious about moving to a place that is better aligned with your aspirations, start by making a rank list of what's important to you in your search. And again, I encourage you to think from pattern to details. So looking at the big picture first, there is a list of things to consider on a national level, then on a regional level, then on a site level. And I can't go into all of this right now. I have presentations made on base of that, but it's important, depending on what you can afford, to make a list of what's important. Okay, so so it's water. Okay, we start with water. On a farm, we start with water. So you're located yourself, you have a community that is, that you like, and when you're setting a farm, the first thing is, is the water. It's essential nutrient for plants, humans, animals. Nothing can grow and live without water. And actually nothing defines more a permaculture farm than water availability. So in a changing climate, you might have too much or too little water. So we need to develop a system that are able to catch, store, and distribute that water, with pond, tanks, and drains, but also to channel that water if there is too much, and all infiltrate into the soil, so you avoid flash floods. And I would say that when we talk about water, there are two primary goals, one primary, one secondary, depending on your situation. First, we want to slow spread and sink that water into the soil. And secondly, we want to capture as much water as we can and store that water for dry periods, and then distribute that water when it's necessary. And all the water systems you put in place, they become permanent land features. Then other infrastructure components will follow. So that's why we start first with water. That's essential. So there are two basic strategies of water conservation on a permaculture farm. I said, storing water in the soil, and then diversion of surface water to dams or ponds and tanks for later use. What you're going to use, if you're going to use one strategy or both, depends on your site conditions, your climate, your soil. And I'm going to start with storing water in the soil. As I said, swale, skill, and plowing, that's all the techniques that we can do the whole presentation. And, Mark Shepard has them, Jeff Lawton has them. Probably, all the different guests that are going to come to Permaculture will probably be experts in some of these. Now I'm just giving you a framework. Okay, so the first one is, your first priority is storing water in the soil, because that's the cheapest way you can store your water, and that's also the largest storage resource available on most sites. The key to soil capacity to hold water is organic matter. So the organic matter actually acts like sponge. So we need to increase the organic matter first in the soil. And there are different techniques. Of course, I won't be going into exactly how to do that, but I'm going to say that the first effort should go into getting water into the ground and store it there. And to do that, you need to shape the land in a way to slow spread and sink. We heard that a lot of times, okay? But you slow spread and sink water for that, organic matter and sponge to absorb. And to do this, we use two very famous techniques in permaculture. One is keyline plowing or subsoiling, that is actually creating channels that hold and distribute water in the channels, and also they're turning subsoil into topsoil, increasing the organic matter. And the second one is swales on the contour, that are actually not moving water, but rather intercepting large amounts of rainfall, and then they fill up and infiltrate the water. So there's the first, okay, so the first, you have to think, once you have a farm, how can I, store it into the soil, because this is the cheapest. That's the cheapest way. So developing, your water layout with swales and keyline. How much water you'll need depends on how much you can get from the sky, okay? And once you know that, you can start designing a water system and locating your ponds and dams. And the first rule of working with water is to keep it in its place of highest potential on the landscape that's up high. This is, of course, provided that you can put it there economically. And for both agriculture and domestic purposes, we want to have a gravity-driven system as opposed to pump-driven one, because gravity never breaks, and pumps do, and that's not resilient. So there are different types of dams or ponds that you can utilize on your property, and the best one, is the keyline point dam. I just want to make a note that in America, in US they say ponds, and in Australia they say dams. So I'll just use one of the other. So in locating the key point dam, the best design methodology is the best thing is to use the key line to find that dam that has the highest practical water holding position in the landscape. This will be the most economical and the biggest storage. And by using key line methodology, it helps us to pinpoint that location. And of course, the whole books are written on that. I'm just opening your eyes to see, okay, the first thing that you need to think about on your property is where is my key line? I can put the dam there, because then I can, I just build a dam wall, and I have a really good water storage. But there are other types to consider. The first one is the saddle dam, and this is most likely going to be, the other highest water available, the highest available water storage in the landscape. A saddle may simply be a dip or break along a ridge crest, and that is the high ground. And another type is the ridge point dam, and that is a dam that's built on flattened ridges on a descending ridge line. So if you look at the lower left image, so as contour lines start to widen on a descending ridge line, that would be a good position also for a dam, because of course it's on a ridge, so it's high in the landscape. But in case that you can't build your pond high in the landscape, maybe you can put a tank, a large header tank that will be then used for irrigation and water supply purpose. And you'll want to position that header tank at the highest practical point, somewhere on the top of your property. And then, if your pond is located somewhere, lower in the landscape, then you can do the pumping to that elevator header tank, and then you do that pumping just for, I don't know, 10-20 minutes. You fill your tank, and then you get that you have that gravity effect again, using that tank for irrigation or domestic purposes. And once you're done with the water storage, locating and digging and building and everything, you need to have a way to harvest that water and then move it if you need, move it to other places. So the next big part of the farm water system is, diversion drains, or so-called harvesting drains. So they are used both for water harvesting and irrigation. And these drains are actually, trenches in the soil that are not that level as compared to swales that are level. And they are moving water to a specific location, such as wetland or pond or tank or creek. And you can think of diversion drains like this, like a giant earthen gutters that are placed across the landscape to harvest and move water in a manner that is similar to rain gutters on a house. And so that's distributing and harvesting water with these kind of trenches. But another way of distributing water is release of that water that's stored by using a gravity fed pipe network. As I said, you fill your tank with dam water using water pump, and then that water is released to irrigate the orchards and gardens through the network of irrigation pipes. As you can see on the lower right image, that's just the outline of David Holmgren's place with his, he has ponds, and he has 2 ponds that are actually low in the landscape, but then he pumps the water high on a tank that is at the highest point, and then distributes that water when it's necessary. And in Australia, it's necessary. So his farm is booming in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the Australian heat. So, and then we move to, after water, we move to infrastructure. I said, first you develop your water system, and then that water system, then your infrastructure is actually following, it's built on top of that and following those elements. And I would say that built elements are as important as natural ones. Building of core infrastructure, we'll get to that. That means access structures and fences, off-grid energy systems. And, I'm putting here also acquisition of quality tools and equipment. All of that should contribute to achieving the optimal use of resources and energy on the farm. And I'll start with core infrastructure first. And when I say core infrastructure, that's access, that's main roads, that's main fences, and that's the location of the house. Those are the three most important infrastructure elements. And we always start with access because access will be the most permanent feature in the landscape. Because the placement of access points, define your movement around the farm for many years to come. And for this reason, it has to be considered early in the process, immediately after the water systems. And the best position, I'm going to tell you the two best positions for access points. So the first one is on the ridge crest, basically on the top of the ridge, because the ridges, they represent the highest point in the landscape. This is an ideal location for a few reasons. And ridges, they naturally stay dry during the rain events. You can easily access them throughout the year, and these roads will be, because of that, easy to maintain compared to the roads on slopes or in valleys. And of course, once you have your roads on the ridges, it's easy to look at the landscape that's below you, so you have a good overview of what's happening on your farm. And the second one would be the roads on contours, because whatever roads you build, they will change the natural drainage pattern, and they actually act as a hard surface runoff. So in a sense, if you build them on the contour, they will be acting like a swales, because they'll be actually collecting water. If you put a small drain, if you put it on a small inclination and a small drain, you actually have a swale, and this will prevent erosion. And another additional benefit, if you have your roads on the contour, you actually require much more less energy to drive over them. You're not going up, you're not going down, you're not doing anything except just going straight. That is, if your landscape will allow for something like that. Okay, so the next big component that is really important is the house. Most people usually already had a house on the property, so it's only a matter of adapting that house to your needs. But if you don't have one, then it's really important where you put it, because this is going to be a fundamental decision that makes all the difference between is it comfortable or is it comfortable or not, and is it energy consuming or not. Okay, so that's why the golden rule when considering the placement of the house is you should place it in a way that optimizes the energy flows. And optimizing energy flows simply means using your sector map that you created, and then seeing where to position your house in response to all those energies that are coming from outside. And I would say that house should be ideally on a slope, because because this allows for good air and water drainage. You have gravity potential, and you are actually outside of the danger of the floods. If you build your house on the top, then wind can come from any direction. You have to pump the water, energy, adding to energy costs. On the other hand, if you go to other extreme and build on the flat, especially near a river, or on river flats or low gullies, you are exposing yourself to flooding and waterlogging, and it can be much colder in the winter. So that's why I say the best option for your house is somewhere mid-slope. In that way, you avoid the frost, because as the cold air is moving, actually, it will move past your house and go down into the valley. Your house is not exposed to the wind. You can use the water tank, from your sheds, for example, if you have them more up the hill, and you are out of the flood zone. And that's the kind of, if you have that opportunity, so midway, maybe you won't have the best views, but Bill Moss actually suggests building a small, like a temporary structure on top of the hill where you can go and have the best views imaginable. All right. So the next thing is fencing. That's from the core infrastructure, components, because the fencing is also a longer lasting feature of your farm. And I'm talking here about not temporary fencing, talking, the long-term ones, the ones like stone wall fences or hard wire fences that you can build that can, be there for a while. But, also considering living fences and hedges that you can use instead of the wire fence of stone wall. They also fulfill then additional functions, such as being used as shelter belts or windbreaks. And with that, I would say that the first, of course, the first fence we should consider is a general boundary or perimeter fence. And maybe I should have, put in my mind, I will be putting maybe the perimeter fence. Actually, the first thing I would do on a property. Sure, you need, once you have your water, even when you're building a house, the first thing you need is actually perimeter fence to exclude all the bad guys out. And if once you have something, if you already have something growing, then you need a fence to to keep that livestock out. And here that's why we build first water and then access, and then the fences that are within the property, they're actually going to follow the roads. They're going to follow their pattern. As you can see on the right, this right image, that's from Darren Doherty, and the red lines are actually fences, and fences are following the yellow lines, and those are the roads. And because the water lines are already built, once you have your fences that are actually following the roads, they're actually enclosing your future growing areas. So this all falls naturally on top. Water systems, access, then your house, then fences, and basically by doing so you predetermine where you'll be growing your stuff, and then you can based on zones and where your house is, locate different growing systems in those areas. And then in infrastructure, I put special emphasis on the homestead area. And when I say homestead area, I think about zones 1 and 2. Okay, zones 3 and 4, that's completely farming area. Zone 1 and 2 are the extent of the where the house is located, and maybe your orchards, everything that can be actually controlled much more. And the first thing of course in homestead area is determining what kind of structures you need. So again, going from water, then maybe some additional mobile fences, and then locating different structures, sheds and storage areas. And in this, I would say that it's important how you arrange all of those all those buildings. And when you're thinking where to position them, think about the traffic between them. The more traffic between the elements, the closer they have to be. So I would say that the perfect building complex would be something like a courtyard, where all buildings are kind of grouped together around the central courtyard. So when you come, with your vehicle and put it in the middle of the courtyard, you have all the buildings are actually there with easily accessible. And also special emphasis is put on designing and setting up the energy producing and harvesting structures, the off-grid systems that are going to power the homestead. So I can't go into all of them, but just I would say that it's hard to expect that you'll be able to produce all of your energy, but rather think in terms of self-reliance, or in a sense, okay, so how many days I can go without energy? So, because even in the worst of cases, I would say here in Croatia, in the middle of the war, it wasn't happening like we didn't have electricity for a week. There will be points where we didn't have electricity maybe for a day or so. So and that's kind of the worst case scenario, because unless during the war they destroy completely the electric grid, electricity will be still coming. That's not the focus point of enemy. Enemy in war is trying to kill you, not the electricity. So that's kind of the worst case scenario. Or maybe maybe if you're able to operate 4 days without electricity, that's as good as it gets for in terms of self-reliance. Okay, and then we have living systems. Okay, that's food. So we went through your location, your community, your water, your infrastructure. And now it's living systems. So, and by living systems, that's just a fancy way of saying annual gardens or permaculture orchards, or food forests, food savannas. And this is usually the main focus of permaculture. But here, we can, by providing for our needs, we can also perform, we can also do the necessary restoration of damaged ecosystems. So again, we are doing two things. We are contributing to overall mitigation of, climate change, for example, but also providing for our needs, and doing that in a way that actually, again, saves our time and energy and labor. By establishing, I'll be talking about what kind of systems are those that are actually resilient, but usually this is the main focus of permaculture, but I put it just one of the 5 main components of a resilient permaculture farm. And in building resilience, I would say that we need to plan with zones in mind. So I said that you position your house in the best way possible, and then you organize your growing environment in a way according to zones. I don't need to explain zones. Probably everybody know. But what I'm trying to say here is that when planning, you should think in zones, because zones are organized in a way that saves you energy and time. Okay, and according, of course, how often we use something, or how often we need to care for something. And each permaculture, permaculture farm is divided into zones. So zone planning is essential. And now I'm just going to go through each zone to see what kind of systems you can have in zones. And of course, the first one is zone 1. And, of course, that's intensive gardens or annuals and perennials, actually extension of kitchen. And here we also hold small animals, like chickens, guinea pigs, or worms. And zone 1 is highly dependent on how large is your site, access, and what's the access points and how much time you have available. But I won't be going into. Everybody knows about annual gardens. The point is, put them as close as possible to the house. In zone 2, we have it's often thought as a home orchard. So this is a semi-intensely managed and requires observation and maintenance every few days. We don't visit that every day, but management is not quite so intensive. So here we have, food forests or some kind of home orchards, and also small animals. And as I said, each of these subjects that I'm talking right now can be expanded. So, recently there was a Stefan from Permaculture Orchard. So I'm just explaining where to position those elements in your overall structure of your farm. Okay, so this is still Homestead Area, zone 1, zone 2. These areas can be easily controlled by the systems that you put in place. as compared to zone 3, that's actually, you know, much more. Sometimes people don't have zone 3. Sometimes they just have a homestead area, zone 1 and zone 2. But zone 3 is interesting because that's to be a completely farming zone, and it includes, you know, field crop production and tree crops, and you don't have to, you know, you don't have to tend to those crops. And I would say that these are the most resilient systems that you can create, because you do your best, you plant, you select the good varieties, and then you leave the system on itself to care for itself, and actually exclude the non-survivors. And here we would, you know, have agroforestry crops, or this would be an agroforestry zone of commercial crops and animals, you know, large fruit and nut orchards, bigger systems, field crops such as grains, commercial gardens. This is actually the commercial zone that is able to produce more on a commodity side products. And then, you know, zone 4, that's actually a buffer between zone 5 and zone 3. This is a semi-managed area. Here you have resources like, you know, timber trees or just for firewood. Or maybe you are growing mushrooms in this area. So each zone has its own function, okay? Each zone here, you know, firewood and timber, okay? So basically you are self-sufficient for your heating, for example, if you can afford to have zone 4 on your property. And also you can do also forest grazing and silvopasture for animals. But I would say that forest farming is the main feature. Forest farming, in a sense, timber, firewood, and, you know, mushrooms. Each zone has its own place. And, you know, of course, the zone 5, that's unmanaged, but I would say that in learning how to be resilient with your tree crops, with your perennial system, this is the zone that we are learning from, okay? So this is the ecosystem that actually surrounds our farm. And to be able to build resilient tree crops and systems that are going to produce without, you know, us putting much effort, we need to actually imitate or, you know, mimic the system, the ecosystem that is actually around us. Because if you have a piece of property and you're trying to put your orchard there, the system, the ecosystem that's actually around you will always try to, you know, with succession and with the seeds and everything, will be always trying to attack your property in a sense, okay? So the forest, if you have your property surrounded by forest, then that forest will be always trying, your property will be always trying to be forest. So if you want to set up a resilient system, you actually mimic that ecosystem with the species that are in, okay? And you create a system that is similar to that one. And by doing so, you actually use much less energy. And this is, you know, what I'm trying to say. Okay, so this is the Mark Shepard's, you know, farm and pictures from Mark Shepard's, you know, system that he has established, and they're actually, you know, forest-like or savanna-like systems. And by creating those kind of systems, he's using the best adapted species, and it's amazing how much, you know, one person can actually manage by keeping a system in a forest-like shape, and that is actually the resilience that I'm talking. Because if you plant trees that are maybe slightly out of zone, then, you know, slightly up or down, you know, from your current zone, then no matter what happens with the weather, you'll be having trees that are, you know, already adapting to those kind of conditions. And compared to the, you know, just growing some kind of exotic fruit on your property, you'll always have the trouble of maintaining, you know, maintaining those trees. And the final part is the farm economy. Okay, so that's the important part if you wanna achieve freedom and create a life you want. You can do that by doing something that's aligned with your values and making a living out of it. And on a permaculture farm, there are many opportunities to develop the multiple income streams and sustain yourself in a meaningful and a resilient way. And this is actually your best defense against, all kinds of troubles, income loss or whatever is to have to develop a farm economy that is actually communicating with the local community. And on my blog, I actually outlined 7 different ways to make a living from permaculture farm. And of course, the first one is permaculture farmer, and that's what most people are actually doing on a farm. But I would say that, just like Mark Shepard said, that's just too narrow of a focus. There are many other things, and the second one would be value adding. So, and this is just a natural addition to your farming efforts. Anything that you can't sell, you need to preserve, and by doing so, you're actually adding value. And you don't even have to be a primary producer. You can get all the products and value add and then sell, because this is what people are actually looking for today, like an artisan local production, healthy food and healthy products. So that's a reasonable path to take. And the third one will be marketing and distribution, because after you process after production and processing, then the next stage is actually marketing and distribution. And it's not as hard to produce as it's actually to sell. So a lot of people are actually struggling with that. So if you have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, your farm can actually become a hub for marketing and distribution of other people's product. And this is simply brokering for others. You aggregate, and then what others produce, you find existing markets, and then you sell those products, earning a commission. Another big one is actually nursery, because permaculture as a movement is gaining in popularity. So people need plants, and people need specific plants, permaculture plants. So I would say there is an opportunity to develop new breeds of of animals and new varieties of fruit trees that people will buy. And one of these examples that I can remember now is Mark Shepard, where he's already developing new varieties, chestnuts and hazelnuts, and then selling that across the country. But that can be also applied to animals, new breeds of chickens and pigs as well. And then, of course, in a matter of stacking enterprises, you can do services also, because your farm can provide different farm-related services such as ecotourism, recreation, basic healthcare. That's the simplest way is just putting your existing assets to productive use by renting them, promoting your farm as a rural retreat or vacation style property. There are many other possibilities. Basic healthcare, and by actually making people come to your place, then you can offer them your primary production, your farming efforts, and the value adds you have, or even whatever you have from distributing of others. So they all stack on top of it, top of each other. And then teaching, of course, education. That's what people usually think when they see making a living from permaculture. But education is actually really good, because it can be time intensive, but it really has really requires little expenditure. It's relatively low cost compared to what you get when you are fully engaged in a let's say food production and then selling at farmers market. So once you have your farm going, you can start leveraging your experiences and demonstration site to teach others the secrets of your success. You can offer PDC courses, workshops, and you don't have to be just limited to physical site. You can sell online as well. And finally, I would say consulting, designing and implementing designs. That's not strictly farm related income, but because you have your site and that's your keystone portfolio site, most likely is that people will be interested if you are providing services to establish systems like that on their farm. A good example is actually Ben Falk. So he created his, he established his site, and now he's a designer actually implementing design services. So that's another option. So there are plenty of options on the farm itself, and it's not just a matter of I'll just have one occupation and I'll just going to be a permaculture farmer. Most likely it's going to be in 100% of your income there'll be 50% from farming, let's say 20% from value adding, 20% from nursery, 10% from teaching. So the overall is actually what's important is that you are having multiple income streams, and by doing so increasing your resiliency. And on top of that farm economy, you're actually interacting with your community economy and you can create alternative economies. And that's what I was talking with Josiah. We have today we have all these great tools, like alternative currencies like Bitcoin are actually not just currencies, but there are new tech platform for other stuff as well. So that's what was how they say that, what was I forget the saying, but Bitcoin is now becoming not just for money. It's a great foundation it's a great platform for other many things. It's completely decentralized. There are many other alternative currencies that can exist, and on top of the platform. And it's a free way of trading between people in the entire world. It's free, instantaneous. It doesn't require any super advanced technology, and it powers people. So you can bypass the bank, you can bypass the centralized system and grocery stores or whatever. So I would say there is a great opportunity in using these kind of technologies. And we also have new ways of self-organizing, new platforms, such as aggregation software and food hubs that all allow us to create alternative economies to the existing ones. And I would say the trend is that we only have more and more these good technologies. And I would say that just in closing, I would say that sometimes people attack me that I'm fear mongering, and I would say people living each of us live in its own bubble, and sometimes that bubble can be a harsh reality, like reality of Greece, somebody in Greece or somebody in Croatia, or I don't know, good reality, somebody living in Australia or somewhere in the US. I would say it's not important if you believe me that we are facing challenges and the thing might change. What's important is that in let's say preparing and creating quality life for yourself, you will never regret doing so. So it's not like you need to be prepared for the best in life. You always prepare for the worst, and then you go with the flow. You know that you've done best you can, and then you just go with what life throws at you. And with that, we are done. Can you hear me, Josiah?
Yeah, that was awesome, man. Yeah, that picture right there you got up, that's a great one. I really think that it's important for people to understand what those things are on the board. Where we get the most pushback, especially in America, I think, is when people see that governments wanting to do that, that's when people start pushing back. And then everybody else that wants the government to do that thinks they just hate the earth and want to destroy it or something because they don't want those things. But they do want those things. They just don't want the government to be doing it.
Yeah.
And that really ties in. I think that really ties into why Bitcoin is so successful. It's because we want a currency that the government doesn't. Money is a great thing. We just don't want the government doing it.
Yeah. Well, I always have issues with seeing, if I see a politician behind a climate change something, I start immediately, that immediately, raises my alarm.
Flags.
It's a complex issue, but what I'm afraid is when it comes to climate is that the government will use it for some kind, because they'll just, the government operate in a sense that they never leave a good crisis to go to waste. And, good crisis could be a climate change, and then they could use it for all kind of agenda they want. So that's the main, threat that I'm seeing when it comes to government connecting, the threat of climate change to their agenda.
All right, we are going to run into questions and answers next. Guide permacultureapprentice.com and sign up for this newsletter. It is a fantastic newsletter. And I actually pulled up, this is an email I got from the Permaculture Apprentice. And this is the reason I wanted William on the show. This was an awesome email. I just want to read it to you real quick. Recently, I got criticized by a few friends and family members about my life to normal people. I should have a 9-to-5 job, a secure salary, and be a slave to a corrupt system. I decided to question that status quo, and now I get criticized because of my choices from time to time. I've made many uncomfortable decisions in my life. My wife and I left a pretty good living with good salaries in Australia. We decided against all odds to come back to economically troubled Croatia in pursuit of our simple life. Needless to say that people said we were crazy. I've decided to start a permaculture farm in the middle of nowhere. People said that's a childish dream. Now, as my website grew to $10,000 paid for my efforts, people say it will never work. It's hard going against the grain all the time, but as life likes to play games with us and unpredictable things happen, recently my wife ended up in a hospital in an ER. It wasn't anything life-threatening, but still, with a fever and dizziness, you're better safe than sorry. All I could do at the time was wait, but I couldn't sit, so I began anxiously walking around the hallway. I walked up and down until accidentally doors of an intensive care room opened in front of me. There I saw an old man who looked like he had only days, hours, or minutes to live, breathing deeply like each breath could be his last one. As I stood there frozen, I remember thinking to myself, is this what it all comes down to? What would be important to me if I was on my deathbed, reflecting on my life? Deep in my heart, I knew the answer, that I lived a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This, once again, have put things into perspective, and I must say that I'm happy with all the choices I've made in my life. They weren't easy, but they were true to what I feel is the right path to take. The lesson is, no matter which goal you choose, there will be lots of people telling you you're wrong. You're better off doing what you feel is right for you, so when the time comes and you're on your deathbed, you'll be able to say, I tried and I have no regrets. For that newsletter, what a great, I don't even know if that ended up being a post on Permaculture Apprentice. It was just an email.
Yeah, it was just an email.
And yeah. So once again, there it is, permacultureapprentice.com. I highly recommend it. I think it's probably one of the top permaculture blogs on the internet, or it's one of the best in my opinion. You have some great articles in here. I was just look at this. We got
Yeah, there was the last 2 months were hard.
yeah. I mean, there was some deep stuff in this presentation. You know, it's because the world is just a crazy place right now. This is a great one. Can you really make a living from a permaculture farm? 7 ways to find out how. So once again, guys, head over to permacultureapprentice.com, subscribe to the newsletter. It's great. Let's move on to questions and answers.